We're going to gab about tabletop role-playing, today on the OSMtable. Hello and welcome to the OSMtable. I'm Dylan.
I'm Basil.
And I'm Tobias.
And I'm Niko.
So this is going to be something a bit different. We're going to attempt to revitalize an old AwesomeCast episode format, the OSMtable. And I'm going to do that by attempting to commit the worst podcasting sin, which is trying to recreate a spontaneous conversation as an episode after the fact.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. At MomoCon a little over a week ago, we all sat down at lunch. We had this really good sort of meandering conversation about tabletop role-playing games. And in the middle of it, I'm like, we should be recording this. You know, the prime podcasting sin.
All of your hobbies should be content at all times.
That's right.
Not quite
Always
that.
be contenting.
Not everything should be content, but good discussions could be content.
That makes me feel a lot better because I was the equivalent of hungover, eating a Subway sandwich and talking about role play, and it's like, I'm glad I impressed you with that, but okay.
I don't know. I thought it was a good discussion. So basically, for this format, I want to lead off with an open-ended question. We'll all sort of give an opening statement, see where we go from there. If this goes well, we might try to do more roundtables, maybe on some topics other than TTRPGs, with maybe different panels of people. And the question for today is, what is your philosophy on world building? And you can take that however you want. It's just kind of to kick off this discussion. So I'm going to start. And I really have 3 points. The first is care about your world, but not too much. You're not writing a novel. You're not writing a campaign source book. You're creating a tool to help you and the players at the table. If you have a precious baby world, you're going to have some feelings when the players change it in ways you didn't want. And if you try to build an entire world, you won't ever finish running it or finish to run it. So what you want is a world building process that's manageable, that you can do week to week. Which connects to point 2. If you've listened to Sly Flourish, you know Mike Shea talks a lot about spiral campaign design. I really like it. I stumbled into it sort of backwards by using games that have world and town creation rules. All I need is, what does the world feel like? What's possible? What's not possible? Does it fit with your GM style? I need improv prompts. I need things that I can't come up easily with at the table while under pressure. Everything else I can riff on. I like to write down the short-term plans, kind of leave the long-term planning in my head to chew on. And my third point sounds stupidly obvious. It's that the world is something the players can interact with. That is its purpose. They're building a mental model of the world. They are testing hypotheses. Sometimes they're correct, which feels great. Sometimes they're wrong, which means they have to regroup and discuss their options. You want both of those experiences to kind of create moments of tension and moments of victory, because ultimately players are doing meaning making. So you leave gaps, you create nuance, you avoid black and white thinking so that you can surprise them. And when players create meaning, you fold that back into your world. How you do that is probably a separate topic, but that's kind of my approach. That's the way I like to think about it. Basil?
Well, for me, I don't have like numbered lists and actual points and topic
that's your
points,
DM style. That's your DM style. You don't have a regimented thing like Dylan does. You have your own sort of.
I'm not, well, okay, sometimes I'm this detailed, but also like I'm dragging you guys into a round table. I need to be prepared.
And that's fair. No,
when you brought up the master and we're the podcast characters, the PCs, is that what's going on?
Look,
I
Dylan
see,
is always be DMing.
This is just a role play. You tricked us into playing a role play game, Dylan. I go thinking about podcasters. You tricked us.
No, I've brought you into my world as like a pre-planner, as an extreme pre-planner.
All right, everybody, roll characters.
This
You
is
even have
this is what
initiative
it's
order.
like in
You
my
have
brain.
initiative order. You're going first. Base is going south. Oh my God. What have you done?
All right, let me activate my legendary action and actually answer Dylan's thing. For me, I still think back to when I first got into tabletop role playing, which was in middle school when I cracked open an issue of a Game Informer where they're talking about the Super Nintendo game Shadowrun and how it was based on a tabletop role playing game called, well, Shadowrun. I remember talking to my godmother, who her kids were into things like that, and so I knew that any nerdy thing I could talk to her about it. And sure enough, she knew exactly where to take me so that I could spend money and buy my first ever campaign book for anything, which was Shadowrun 2nd Edition. She took me to the local indie nerdy bookstore that carries these things. And what I really fell in love with was not so much the rule set, but the world that existed in Shadowrun. Because there was this whole campaign setting, there was a timeline, there were characters chattering within the confines of the book, and just the whole world that they built really just caught my fancy and probably imprinted on me forever. So I am very much, when I'm a player, I really like playing in the DM space. I want to make a character that fits in with the world the DM set it in front of me. I'm not looking to rock the boat. I just want to, in the further cursed world of improv, I want to and the DM and play in their space. Now, as a GM, DM, TM, whatever, whatever M's are, when I'm creating a world, I'm creating a world that I'm hopefully is inviting the characters to play in my space. I want it to be, fun and inviting with some cool hooks. I know that when I am creating a general plot line and story for the characters to go through, what I usually do is I'm not focusing on like the story itself, but making sure I have cool moments where once they get to around at this point, this moment's going to happen, and hopefully they think it's really cool. And if they don't, oh well, then we'll find a different moment. But that's, for me, it's not so much, it's about creating neat moments that I can pull on them so they can do cool things in my space.
Tobias?
Cool. And I guess just to riff off that, like I completely agree. I feel like so often DMs can think of it as, okay, I'm the facilitator for the fun the other people are having. I have to do work so other people, my friends, have fun. But you're there to have fun too. Like, you are a player. It is important to remember that you are a player just as much as your PCs are. And some people really like writing stories and doing Tolkien-esque detail about these individual places in the world. Some people don't. Some people just gotta, just want to sit around, do beer and pretzels with some friends and tell some funny stories. And those are all valid ways to play. And to Dylan, sort of what you were saying is, I feel like a lot of what you're asking for is like trust from the players. Is you have to let go of that trust. You have to trust fall to a degree into players. I think a lot of DMs really just want to write the next Lord of the Rings style huge fantasy epic with a huge binder full of world. And that's, again, if you like that, if you enjoy that aspect of world building, then hell yeah, do it. But it's also to remember that you're not writing a novel. You're writing a game for other human beings to play in, and that's kind of my major thing. If you talk with me long enough, you know that I really love the Powered by the Apocalypse setting, or the setting, but the game system. Things like Apocalypse World and Dungeon World was my first experience with that setting system. I keep saying setting, it says system. And it really kind of changed the way I thought about games, because up until that point, I played a few things, but mostly Dungeons and Dragons. So to see the principles that were in Dungeon World kind of changed the way I thought about the games. And one of the principles was draw maps, leave blanks. You want to get enough setting to give enough detail to give your setting flavor, but you want to leave gaps for the players to fill in, to come into and do what they want, express themselves as well. And I feel like that's kind of my thing, is that, in my history, I've mostly run through pre-published settings, done some Forgotten Realms, some Galarian, and Pathfinder was my last major campaign. I was doing Kingmaker in 5th edition. So Galarian already has that world already set for you. But I don't really care about Pathfinder, the setting, really. Like, I didn't really get into it. So I let the players kind of figure out what it meant to them. And so, for instance, I had one cleric. I told the dude, okay, you make the Pantheon. You just what are gods to you? Like, I don't really care about the Galarian setting, all those people. Like, it doesn't matter to me. So you make it up. And he said at the time he was playing the video game Axiom Verge. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to take the gods and the Pantheon from Axiom Verge and we're going to put it in the setting. Cool. I'll let him decide which one he wanted to worship specifically. He gave me a list of the other ones, and I kind of integrated those as we played and saw things in the setting. But it's like, I feel like that gives the players agency and a little bit of control and that creative bit. I feel like as a player, too many times when I've been running through a setting or pre-written module with another DM, it's like, okay, I want to do this. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really match because this god is this alignment and this setting doesn't really work. And it's like, well, I want to make my own thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Mariasu, a long lost prince of a kingdom that's super powerful, and I have a unicorn or whatever, like thing like that. Like, I still want the agency to tell my own story in your setting. And as a DM, I want to give the players the space to do that. I feel like that's very important.
Niko?
Ditto. No, I think I definitely align a lot on especially what I like how Basil was particularly hitting the points of being that kind of facilitator to let players have fun and just kind of mess around and blow up stuff in the world that I'm making for them. And to get to the point that Tobias was making earlier about not wanting to have the mentality of the GM going, oh, I have to do all this work because I'm making fun of the players, like a sacrificial role of the GM. Like, no, doing that work is fun for me. I have fun creating the set pieces that my players get to destroy either in combat or so whatever creative way I didn't think of, they are wrecking the world that I make. And that's great. It's very akin. We're all also involved in various aspects of going to conventions and convention working. And it's a very similar mindset of you are putting together an event, you're putting together a panel, you're putting together a game, you're putting together an experience for other people to enjoy. And you enjoy putting on that experience for them and seeing their reaction and getting that kind of audience feedback, even though it's not just an audience, they're players, they're active participants, but you're the event runner. You were the one that's, organizing the game, making it happen, and you get to see them enjoy the event, hopefully, if the event goes well.
That is a really good analogy. I had not thought about it that way, but that's definitely part of the enjoyment I get out of GMing. Even like, you aren't necessarily going to understand what the players want out of a game, but the fact that you can provide something that they can work with and that they can create their own enjoyment is great.
It's important to sort of you need an active perception role at the table, and you see the people. I guess insight would be, you need an active insight check to see what people really enjoy. Maybe it's not always obvious. When I think back to my last big game, Kingmaker, we had one guy who was a noble, and this Kingmaker is very much about making this kingdom, this up and coming kingdom, this wilderness setting. He really enjoyed that aspect and sort of the bureaucracy, I guess, of it. So even though it's not my thing, I sort of let him play off that a lot, and I remember very, very specifically, there was one time in Kingmaker, there's a witch in one of the hexes somewhere, and the book is just she has this, she can give you an oracle, a tarot reading or whatever, if you want, but my cleric was really into it. So we sat there for a bit, and I remember very specifically getting in the mood of being a cryptic old witch in the woods. I didn't really plan on doing that, but when I saw how he enjoyed it, I realized that would be a lot of flavor and a really cool sort of flavor that normally I would just skip over, because in my mind it's just, okay, it's a witch. She gives you a reading, and that's that. But if you sit there and seep yourself in the world you build, I think is important too.
Oh yeah, just to go back, because I think that hits on a lot of the event runner organizer analogy I was using, because there's a lot of stuff at conventions I don't care about, but I love that I'm able to provide that experience for the attendees that do enjoy that kind of thing. So it just learning to cater to all the players that you have in your group, because they're all going to be different players than what you would be doing if you were on the other side of the screen, and just getting the experience to gel, especially if you can get all of them on board and they all like different things, but they're all having a good time, is the best high of a GM.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that kind of gets back to that meaning making thing when you have those moments where in your mind you kind of know what's going on, but the players sit down and they're throwing all these different perspectives at you and like, oh wow, I had not thought of those things. And also being on the other side of that, being a player and having those sorts of deliberations, if they're managed well, is pretty fun. But I do want to get back to Tobias. You'd mentioned trust, and like that has kind of become the key for me of both being a player and being a DM. The first long campaign I played back in college, we had a DM who was very much like, I am writing a book and don't you guys ruin it. There was more to it, but and I kind of became the like, well, if I can just run the rule set, then I can be the referee and keep everyone at peace. And now at 40, it's like I've got more emotional intelligence. I've kind of learned to empathize better. And I'm going like, I don't want to play with you if I can't trust you. And I think that is such a key to running a good game is creating that, both the empathy, like the skill set, and just knowing how to manage people out of game, and knowing how to manage issues out of game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to a lot of that old Geek Social Fallacies article.
Yes.
The idea that
yes,
since we're all nerds in high school or college, in your case, we're this little outcast group, so we can't rock our own little boat because we're afraid of hurting each other's feelings. And you let my first game in high school was like 10 people because we had an entire friend group, and it was fun at the time because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And like, oh, I get to be an elf ranger? Hell yes. That's all I want out of life, is to be a badass Legolas. Like, and that was cool. But looking back, it's like, man, I really should have told people no. We really should have like walked away from some of those bad sessions, And yeah, the emotional intelligence is part of it for sure, because the rules are the important thing. We're not here to pay tribute to Dungeons and Dragons SRD. We're there to have fun.
Yeah.
And that fun could be different for all of us. Maybe someone likes the tactical parts. Maybe someone just wants to act. Maybe someone just wants to be in the room with his friends to hang out. Those are all valid play styles. Robin Law's player types, I think, is a really great article everyone should read, simply for that reason, because those are all valid player types, and you kind of have to recognize that one's not better than the other.
No, sometimes I wonder if I just really lucked out where I did not play D&D as a system for reals until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. Because when I was growing up, like in middle school and high school, in middle school, we played a lot of Shadowrun and Champions. In high school, it was pretty much all, well, still Shadowrun, but we moved on to World of Darkness stuff. So a lot of werewolf, mage, vampire, wraith. So we all had a lot of experience, especially with the more role-playing parts of things, which really enabled me. So when I first started running my own campaigns, was actually for my anime club. And I chose because I am sometimes the worst kind of hipster nerd. You should know that because I run a podcast. But I ran a fan-created Final Fantasy role-playing game system. It was called Returners. The Returners. Yeah. The
Returners RPG.
I used to live. That was also the IRC chat groups that I used to hang out with in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. And but I also realized later on that, oh shoot, I am a lot of these people's first real GM. And thank goodness. And at the time I thought, well, at least I've been doing this for like 10 years. Sure, as like a preteen and teenager and now young adult. But yeah, I had that, and thankfully I was able to plan things and sort of anticipate what they might do. And then again, that's when I really discovered running games for a few times. I'm like, oh, I really I need to be able to go, well, what if they don't enter the tavern to get their job? What if they decide to go to the left? And I need to be able to, on the spot, come with another reason why they now have to go on their quest and create a whole new NPC to be like, well, actually, you're going on this adventure now. Thank you.
I think there's lots of ways to do that. You know, how you set things up. You know, you've got this information out there that they can run into a lot of different ways. But again, even that comes back to trust, where it's like you want a party that's not just there to screw off. You want a party that's like going to engage with what you're doing. You don't want to railroad them. You don't want to be heavy-handed, but you want them to actually get to the meat of it.
And luckily for me at the time, I was like 20 something and they were between 16 and 18 years of age. Like I had just started college. They are just beginning to wrap up high school. But that's also like the moment of they still see themselves as young teenagers versus I'm a young adult. I clearly have years and years of experience on them. I don't. But that's at that point where the perception of time is very different. And so I kind of earned their trust by default, where I'm the president of this anime club. And now, and I'm older than most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And so they were already willing to listen. And I could tell that I had their trust as anime club guy and I had their trust as anime club attendees. And so it worked out.
Yeah. This is probably a discussion for a whole other episode, but I still feel like the idea of a social contract in session 0 and establishing a social contract is very important, because you have to have that trust. And maybe they're your friends you've known for a long time. Maybe they're these kids that respect you and you can sort of lead around because of that respect. But they could be people at a game store. You don't know. And Dylan, you're a big fan of X-Card and that sort of system. Like, that's part of the social contract. And it can be very easy to be like, we all know how to play D&D. We don't need to go over how to socialize, but yeah, you kind of do sometimes. And it's good to have it laid out and be like, okay, we're going to have an adventure. It's going to be a fantasy adventure. You can do whatever, but no, if you turn left, when I say you kind of need to go right, we're going to have some issues. So like, I'm not going to say no, but I think we're at an age now, at an age of maturity, where it's like our tables would realize you kind of have to go into the tavern and talk to the old man to get the job. Otherwise, we're not going to play tonight.
The X-Card, the social contract thing, that is a whole other discussion. So I'm not going to go down that road. That's a good topic. Basil, you had said something early on about playing in the DM space. And that's actually kind of like the flip side of what I was talking about like not caring too much about your world. Because back when I was younger, I was very much like, okay, these are the races that exist in this world, and these don't, and you have to play certain things. And I'm like, now I don't care, man. I'll fit it in. Whatever you want to play. I don't want to make people suffer because ultimately what I'm doing is I'm usually trying to enforce my play style by that.
I mean, I think you're kind of set as tone, right? Like, even if you don't care that there are or not Dragonborn in your setting, for instance, maybe that's important to you, maybe it's not. But ultimately, you want to set a tone. And that can be important because, as we all know, I'm sure, if you don't rein it in, you're going to get Monty Python very quickly.
I mean, let's be honest. There's no way stopping Monty Python. You never have to set a comedic tone for a game because the players are automatically going to bring a comedic tone to the game.
They will do that for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do like that point though. I think it's perfectly valid to set restrictions on the game as long as you do it up front. Like when you're pitching the games, like, hey guys, I want Player's Handbook D&D example. I want D&D Player's Handbook races only. Nothing from any of the splat books, nothing from third-party books. I just want these species. I don't want your tabaxi. There are no animal people outside of dragon people. And like we're doing a standard sword and sorcery game, or we're doing a standard, or we're doing like a Gothic horror Ravenloft game, or we're going very whimsy kind of Witchlight campaign game. Like, I think it's perfectly fine to do that, but that's part of the conversation. That's part of the pitch that you give your players, and your players are perfectly in the right to go, that's just not the game I'm going to do. And so either you discuss the game that you want to do together, or you guys part ways and find a new group to do the game that you want to do together.
Yeah. And to be clear, I wasn't saying that like you should never have restrictions. It's just like how controlling are you being? Like if you want to limit it for certain reasons, that's fine. But I find like I need to ask that question of myself. Like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because I have a picture of how I want this campaign to go, or am I doing it because, yeah, this actually does figure into the story or the feel in some way that matters?
I can tell, Dylan, that you've been hurt by some people in the past. You want to talk? This will be like a Dylan therapy session. Let's expand upon the players that hurt you.
I have a moment where I'm like, have I been hurt? Man, I don't know. Like I think playing in my 20s, we were all young. We were all dumb. Now I don't really have that problem. Like sometimes Charlie will be kind of the chaos gremlin that I cannot handle. We're all laughing. We know.
I mean, Charlie is like that in regular life.
It's like, what do you mean sometimes?
Yeah.
But now give him the power of imagination.
But it's not too bad. Like I can roll with it. And part of that is like not holding on so tightly to control of the game. And ultimately for me, if we're going to get like therapy here, not feeling like a failure if things kind of get into a position where I'm having trouble rolling with it. And at the same time, like it frustrates me a little bit, but I can also handle it. We're here to have a good time. As a GM, I'm more worried if you are stopping other players from having a good time, if you're stealing spotlight and things like that.
It also really depends on anyone's particular, like what they are coming to role playing for.
Yes.
Because for me, for example, again, one of the most primary systems I really learned on was the storyteller system that powers the World of Darkness. Because at the end of the day, what I am looking for is collaborative storytelling. The story that we tell as a group, for me, is more important than the numbers we're generating on our characters, the dice we're rolling. I want something cool, adventurous, whatever system that you're doing, whether it's D&D or Shadowrun or Kingmaker or what have you. As long as the group together is getting to tell cool stories, whether it be I'm playing in someone's Lord of the Ring novel and I get to be, Bilbo or Gimli or whomever, or are we just going to have this really cool fight encounter where, sure, there's all these guys, surprise, we all have fireballs and we're just going to burninate everything like we're Trogdor. And now we get to go, yeah, you saw what I did with that fireball? Yeah, man, you casted it. Yeah, I did.
Surprise, we all have fireballs is a real life example here for the listener.
But, and there are some people who just want to create the cool character. They want to be like, no, man, I cast the really good fireballs. And
exquisite fireballs.
That's right. Just the most high quality
chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss. Yeah, fireballs. Yeah, it's like it really depends on making sure. And I think that's the whole episode 0. Determining what everyone wants out of a game and being able to sort of agree on what we're coming to this for.
Yeah, I found I can sometimes have problems with this because like if someone's kind of sitting back, I'm like, oh no, I'm not engaging them enough. But really, like there are some players that just want to kind of do some background things. And if they get to do that, that's what they love. And that's great. Then you also have the players that write their own bits of the story. And I've found that like, that's really good at getting me past blank page syndrome as a GM. Like We had Ash in our game that we're running on Fridays, like, had this whole revenge tale that he'd kind of given the outline for. And as soon as I got it, I'm like, oh, I'm going to generate like 3 cities off of this and write a whole bunch. Like, it just starts flowing when you get that. And it's like, bless you for writing your own stuff and being flexible. But both of those can exist in the same party, and it's fine. I did this in a game I'm playing at the local game store where the GM's coming to me and like, what does your character care about? And he's like, man, I just kind of want to be the glue that holds the party together. Like, I'm the healer. I that's all I want to do. I don't really care about having a personal mission. That's a valid way to play.
I like when, especially when, and I'm in like a pickup game or something, or I'm in a kind of someone else's intro to D&D game. I like being that role. It's like, I just want to be support. I just want to help. I'll be a healer, a cleric, or maybe a paladin. That's something that has healing abilities, or I could just kind of let these other people take the spotlight, and I could just kind of help around a bit. I did a session 0 as a player a few weeks ago, and it was very much asking everybody, what do you want to get out of this game? And I think that is a very smart way to see what kind of players you get, because I've run games that have the exact kind of dichotomy that Dylan talked about, where huge multi-page backstory that I get to pull from. It's like, great, I have a secondary big bad that I'm going to pull out of your backstory. They're going to show back up, and you're going to get that resolution that you described about. And then another one goes like, oh yeah, I'm a great old one warlock. Awesome. What do you know about your patron? I don't know. Just make it up. It's like, fine.
It's funny you mention that, because like I was gonna say my one big story I remember from, I think when 4th edition was new and I was came in with that. I asked the players point blank, what do you guys want? And I meant it to be like, what kind of treasure do you want me to add in the dungeons? But when my players was like, I want an airship, and he meant it kind of jokingly. The end of the first arc, they had an airship. There was a whole like adventure path I made around getting an airship, and he was a warlock, and turns out the airship was his god. Ooh, what the hell? Like, how did that happen? And so, yeah, it was, that's a whole, I'm not going to do a whole tell me about your player thing here, but it was like, I knew this guy was really into it. He really wanted this story. I wrote a bunch of stuff and let him on simply because in session 0, he was like, I want an airship. So we've been talking about inferring what your players want and trying to read between the lines to be like, are they just a passive person? Are they an actor? Ask them straight up. Like, what do you want out of this? Like, do you want to like do you want to have an active hand in building this whole new setting? Do you just want to hang out with us? Like, there's nothing wrong with even just asking flat out what you want of it, because there is no platonic ideal of a D&D session. It's all going to be different, and we're old enough to realize that now. And just ask the players what they're looking to get out of it.
Yeah. Like I said, I stumbled into a lot of good practices for game planning when I ran Ryutama, and it's got town creation, world creation rules. And I really like that. Like, okay, you've done everything you're going to do in this town. You're moving on to the next town. Give me some ideas like about that town. Like that felt really good, because now I know kind of what you're expecting. I've got stuff I can riff off of. Like, there's mechanics, there's games out there that do that really well. And whatever game you're running, you can go out and pull those mechanics into your game. I would argue, get that Ryutama town creation sheet. I've heard people talk about other games. I think someone at MomoCon mentioned like the Dresden Files game starts with you building the city collaboratively. Go play other games, get inspiration, pull that into your game, and make your game better.
And that reminded me, again, I like creating cool moments.
Yes.
The fact that they got an airship, and then, oh, that's actually your patron. Boom, gotcha. I remember when I was doing that Final Fantasy game, and one of their points of contact constantly that was sort of directing them here and there was Bahamut, only to find out near the very end of the game that actually Bahamut was the main villain, and he was just leading them along so that way he was on the moon, and he was about to throw a big, mega flare at the world to destroy it, to recreate it as he wills. And I remember the big penultimate time where they were going to land that final strike. They critically failed. And so Bahamut got the mega flare off. The world got destroyed. Then they killed Bahamut. And so what they decided to do was they would just recreate the world again. So that way everyone was still there. Only they made themselves gods in the process. So they could be the ones in charge to make sure it never happened again.
Basil, you really need to look into Fabula Ultima. If that's the kind of game you run, you really need to look into Fabula Ultima.
So years later, we're talking like a decade later, I ran a Deadlands game for this anime club featuring a lot of the same players. And I just gave them Deadlands. Didn't say anything else. We were playing Deadlands until they finally decided they were going to go to the old ones, the weird, creepy horror, evil baddies that are actually behind all the horrible magics of this world. And they did, only to discover that actually this was still the Final Fantasy campaign. The old ones were actually their characters. It's just over eons they turned terrible because humans aren't meant to be immortal. And so now they're the old ones. Now we're playing Final Fantasy Deadlands. Where
isn't that just Yoctoral?
It kind of is, but this is, this was in 2010, not 2025, and it was really fun where they realized they were having to then the end of that campaign was where their current characters were now having to actually face off against their previous characters, and they had a lot of fun killing themselves.
That's world building, baby.
Yep.
You literally built the world with your your cast of characters.
I had one of those cool moments like this weekend when we ran that revenge arc in the D&D game. I'd put this like fey creature together from a bunch of things in Forge of Foes, and I'm like, I'm scared this is going to be too powerful. And they just like the players are just like chewing through him, but he's got a bunch of these legendary actions that lets him do gaze attacks basically, and they have to make saves. And I feel like I'm bad at designing combat, but what happened in that combat is John got to dimension door the character, Ash's character, all over the map. Jen and John both had reaction abilities to give him bonuses against saves. Like you had all these really good moments of people doing something cool in combat. And like, that's it. That's what you want to do. Combat doesn't have to be this complicated challenge. It just has to give players moments to do something cool.
Exactly. And you're having to sort of see what other people are interested in and see what kind of things they're into. Maybe they're into support, like you said, casting Dimension Door and letting other people do really cool shit rather than having to be the person to roll the dice themselves. That's certainly a valid way to play.
Oh, absolutely. Like when I play a healer, I like kind of trying to track everyone's HP, like everyone's damage. That feels really fun, even though most people would look at that and like, that's boring combat. You can't possibly like that. I have to imagine.
You do play White Mage in 14.
Yep.
Something else that I really feel, and this also could probably end up being its own topic, and probably will be, is making fun reoccurring NPCs. NPCs that could come back. I remember, in that first 14, not 14, it could have been 14 at this point, but previous Final Fantasy campaign, again, I was just in college and I was taking a Shakespeare class. So one of the recurring groups was the Denmarks, where they were all parodies of characters from Hamlet who had formed the Turks-like group from Seven. So I more or less remapped all the Turks to Hamlet characters in a Final Fantasy game. And so I would just randomly stick them in towns. They never knew when they were going to show up. They were never like important NPCs, but they would just show up, stir up crap, and then go away. And I was able to bring them back just enough that the players were like, oh, it's them again. Okay. Well, now I want to interact with them this way. Now I'll mess with them that way. And I know, for example, Dylan has an NPC named Rosewind that has sort of inadvertently become that for our group on Friday nights.
It's so good because like I always feel like my NPCs are a little flat and they're all the same. And then I talk to people and it's like, no, like you've created a whole profile of who this guy is. I've talked to, you guys in the group, and it's like, you will talk to me as if this is a character who is not me, that I don't know everything about. And it's so good because, and I think this is just part of world building, game building in general. Like you don't have to do a lot. In a lot of cases, you just have to show up with something and your players will add the meaning to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think to sort of key off what Basil was saying about basically stealing the Turks from Seven is I think sometimes you maybe want to make something original to express your own stretch your own creative muscles. It's totally okay just to steal the plot of a movie. In fact, it's great because people know how a movie is supposed to go, how a certain movie is supposed to go. Have you ever watched a movie and that person did something really stupid? If it were me, I would have done it like this. Well, role playing is how you get to do that. You could just do a movie, a campaign of a movie, and actually reverse it. So you can take the inspiration from other novels, movies, games, and sort of riff them, give them your own sort of meaning as well. And that's totally valid, and you should do it because those are touchstones that people automatically recognize.
My first real DM, I played a little bit before, but my first real ongoing D&D campaign lasted 3.5 years, and my entire D&D career since then has been basically chasing the high of having that long ongoing D&D kind of campaign.
Yeah.
But this was around 2009 and 10ish, so he had NPCs that were just entirely ripped off from other media. He used Game of Thrones characters because at that point the show hadn't started. And then the show did start. And he goes, I had all these NPCs, and now you assholes know who they are or know where the names are, even though they're not the same character. He's just used the name. In some cases there are. I realized years later reading one of the Moorcock Elric books, and your big bad is the big bad in this book. What's going on? It's that's half a decade later. When I think the best way to do what Tobias was talking about, just ripping off from movies and stuff, is to cross-pollinate. Rip off the plot of a movie or novel and use NPCs from other media and to put them in here. I did a published campaign. I ran Storm King's Thunder, and if you start that really early on, there's a helper giant that you can use. And I just played him like Chris Traeger, Rob Lowe's character in Parks and Rec, constantly enthusiastic and upbeat and the players loved it. And it's just pull personalities and character traits from media that you like in different forms, and you could just put them all in a pot, mix it together, and you have a unique dish.
There's a thing that Mike Shea from Sly Flourish talks about. I think there's a lot of these good tips. One of the things I remember him talking about was take an established character and just switch the gender around. Because you've got that little bit of familiarity, but then you've got something different. And that combination is enough to make people feel like it's more original than it is.
I did that once in a campaign setting. It was a homebrew campaign setting. And one of the players just wait, are they almost everyone here is a woman? Because I flipped the gender of a lot of traditional roles. I'm that just shows how offset a lot of traditional roles are. Men is oh, yeah.
You are kind of using some cultural issues there because people expect certain things.
And I told the players, I'm just trying to not make it all dudes. I want it to be better represented. And it's just I love it. It's great. It's go ahead.
But also, it's just the idea of taking something familiar and introducing a slight change. Behind the DM screen, it doesn't feel like much. To the player, they're not in your head. It feels like a lot more.
It's the Clark Kent glasses thing. It's
that's
change things. Yeah, just change it enough, and they're not going to realize that it is this other thing that they're used to seeing.
One of my favorite little bits of toolkit is if you can't think of a name for an NPC and you don't have, fantasynamegenerators.com available at the moment, just take a regular name, change out a letter, remove a letter, it completely changes the texture of a name. And it's it's something like that you don't think of, but it's so simple of a thing.
When one of my dirty secrets was when I was doing a lot of call center work, and technically I still work in a call center, but not the kind that this is applying. Anytime I would get a random name that looked close to a fantasy thing, I would just write it down in a notebook.
I did that. I've done that. I feel bad because it feels like a breach of confidentiality, whatever.
Depending on what industry you're in, that might be a crime.
It's a really cool first name. I'm just going to use that later. My 14
never
last
pair
name.
full names. It's here's a first name, here's a street name that looks really cool.
Yep.
It's just pull. And if you're not in a call center, just be open to things around you that you don't necessarily think are going to be a good source of like fantasy or sci-fi or whatever kind of game you're telling. You definitely consume that kind of media. That's going to help too, but you're going to get inspiration from everywhere around you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to bring that back to world building, the more you experience the world firsthand, the more you understand how people and systems and nature and science and all this stuff really works. And you can import that into what you're writing to make it feel more natural, more complicated, more textured.
And also don't be afraid to let your world be informed by also the actions that your players take.
Yes.
For example, in my Final Fantasy, again, Niko, about chasing that dragon, of a previous campaign. A lot of stuff I'm talking about is this original Final Fantasy fan campaign I did 20 years ago.
Oh no, that math can't be right.
One of the towns was called the Village of Dork, and it was a town where everyone had one saying. It was very much supposed to emulate your standard JRPG town where everyone says one, maybe two things. And people went on predefined routes. And one guy, first thing you talk to him, goes, "Welcome to Dork. Welcome to Dork." Just over and over again. And everything was sort of like almost eerily frozen in place. And it was a fun joke. And people moved on. But then something bad with it happened. And some enemies were about to unleash holy hell. And they happened to be near Dork. So what they did was, they, instead of fighting what they're about to get blasted with, they ran to Dork, expecting that whatever hell was unleashed, they'd be fine because they were in that one town where nothing changes. And so that was correct. The entire area around it was craters, but in that one town, it was all perfect and pristine, like nothing had changed. Nothing changes in this town. And I remembered this for later. So years later, I'm doing a one shot. They're like, "Hey, Basil, you told that really good Final Fantasy story. We want a cool Final Fantasy one shot." And I paused and I went, "Okay." And I gave them a much more traditional, like, dungeon crawl sort of thing where they were going to uncover some ancient magic. And it was in this dungeon that was right by a little town. And it was like, they covered it, and it was some sort of weird, stasis magic. And they realized they had to make use of it because, like, someone else was casting a meteorite or something towards this town. And so they cast this stasis magic they got onto the town. And so by these players' actions, they discovered they created the village of Dork.
Nice.
And they were all so excited because they're like, "Look at the game we did. It was that town." And I was like, "Yeah, it was the town that now it's your fault. It's no longer my fault. You chose those actions. You made that town possible now." It was backstory.
Nice.
Again, my favorite thing is creating cool moments.
All right, so as we come to the end of our hour, does anyone have anything you want to close out on? Anything that might be a topic for a future roundtable?
I just want to key up something that was said earlier. I think Niko was way back, maybe 30 minutes ago at this point. You had mentioned about like setting the tone and stuff. A really cool bit of tech that I've seen a lot of more recent games do is just have your like a page of touchstones. So like Blades in the Dark, for instance, is a game. The beginning of the first chapter, like, or if you want to understand our game, here's the movies and games and the albums, the CDs you should listen to understand it. It's like Blades in the Dark. You've got Dishonored. You've got Dark Souls, Bloodborne. You've got Peaky Blinders even. So it's like, this is the kind of stuff that would get you in the tone, get you in the headspace of what I want to do specifically in this game. It's like we mentioned, it can easily go into Monty Python if you're not careful. Maybe you want to do something that's themed more Final Fantasy, JRPG-ish, something like Fabula Ultima. Maybe you want to go somewhere serious. It's really kind of up to you to set that tone initially. And like we mentioned, media is an easy way to do it. And whether or not you actually use the media in your games, at least having the media up front saying, this is the kind of thing I want this game to be, that at least lets players go and watch those movies, watch those TV shows, read those books, and get an idea for what they should expect to bring to the table.
I love that idea, and I've done that before. The one thing you have to be sure to do is have several examples, because I did that for a campaign once, and I had Deadwood in there, and I had a player go, "I've never seen Deadwood. I don't know what Deadwood is." I'm like, "Oh, let me think," and I was able to. I don't know what I said. As like, no, think of this one instead. But you have to have examples that you have a variety of examples that really exemplify the material, because your players may not know everything that you know.
Yeah, and you're probably going to come in through like a variety of stuff anyway. You're probably not just going to do that with the RPG. That's a cowboy thing, right?
Yeah.
Like Wild West.
Yeah.
Okay. But you could be like that. You could be like a fistful of dollars. I don't know cowboy TV shows or anything. This is a blind spot for me, but it's things like that. You could bring out a variety of things.
Like I was saying, like, again, for me, it's always, creating the cool moments. And sometimes it's the cool moments you make. Sometimes those moments might be moments the players make and surprises you. And suddenly now that's a cool moment for you as the game master, because you were not expecting them to do that. And that gives you something to riff on for later.
Yeah. And I definitely agree that like your world, your plot, all of these elements are sort of the raw materials that those cool moments come from. And they don't just come from you as the GM. They also come from giving your players just the opportunity to do those things that they want to do. As long as they're getting the spotlight, as long as they got a chance to do it, it's going to happen usually. So thank you all for this experiment in Awesome Roundtables. As we end, where can we find everyone online? And do you have anything that you want to plug? I guess we'll start with you, Basil.
Cool. Hi, you can find me at the OSMcast, which is what you're listening to. Haha, gotcha. You're already in. I mean, the two podcasts I run are the OSMcast and the Carbuncle Chronicle, which I'm sure Tobias will probably talk about that one. Possibly, potentially. I don't know. You can find my stuff online on the internets. You can find me at It's Basil Time.
Yeah, I'm not really online as much anymore. The social media game is a young man's game, and I'm not young. But I guess I'm on Blue Sky as R Tobias if you care.
Yeah, you can pretty much find most everything I do at nicholassqualls.com. That's just going to take you to a series of links to all my social media, probably most active on Blue Sky, nicholassqualls.com, on Instagram, or Niko Scream. You can follow my letterbox, post like 2 more movies this year, living that toddler life, so not getting out too much, and also posting a bunch in the AwesomeCast Discord.
Don't you run one of those events, one of them nerd gatherings?
I do run an anime event in Nashville, Tennessee, MTAC, the Middle Tennessee Anime Convention. We just happened a month ago, so you're going to have to wait a while until your next one. But if you're listening to this getting into like the early part of the year, we're usually around Easter weekend. So for next year, check us out April 3rd through the 5th, Nashville, Tennessee, MTAC.net.
And you can find me at dylanwolf.com, on Blue Sky, on the web. Everything else, I've got kind of a link to all my little side projects at links.dylanwolf.com. And kind of applicable to this topic, I started up a TTRPG blog called Travel Check at travelcheck.dylanwolf.com. So that's us. This has been the AwesomeCast. Our website is awesomecast.com. You can find all our other episodes, links to everything else we're doing, such as our Patreon, where you can support our work, get access to occasional bonus episodes, our TeePublic, where you can buy gear for the AwesomeCast and the Carbuncle Chronicle, our Discord, which is where most of us are most active online, our other various social media presences. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we'll see you all next time.
Okay, so I'm going to register right now, tiktok.com/Dylan's Travel Check.